Okay, this is a second scrap piece of paper that I found with a test piece. It wasn't really, not so much of a test piece, but an example of really bad technique using the Cloud Cumulus stamp. Okay, now you never want to use it this way like stacked bricks because it becomes very kind of rectangular and kind of fragmented as far as the blending of the image goes. Yeah. Now I can just stamp this right over in here and blend those cubes out of there, but I want to challenge myself and just see what I could do just with this format without any other additional cloud formations. Now, like I said, I could blend this together. I would just stamp these and overlap these images more than they are right now, and that would blend it all together, especially if I did it in the same color, of course. But let's see what I can do here. I'm thinking about kind of this beams of light coming through here, maybe this one, okay, and coming down here in this direction. I've done this before with beams of light, but not on, you know, a very bad foundation to start off with. But let's see what we can do here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this range of Distress Ink blues, and I just have the re-inker format for them. These days, my desk is so full of ink pads, and I love ink pads, believe me, and different colors, but these days, if I don't really plan on using a certain ink pad to make impressions from, I'm just getting the re-inker, because that's what I'm using it for. I'm using it to tone scenes with, or whatever, color things with, and not really stamp impressions from it. So if that's the case, then I just get the re-inker, because you get more ink in a re-inker than you do a pad anyway, okay? And these, you know, they don't take up any room, or very much room on a desk. Okay, so I have these beams of light in mind, okay? So here's the thing, I need to tone in the background somewhat, or around where the light is going to be coming out of a little bit. Otherwise, you know, you won't see these beams if everything's real light in there. But I don't want to tone it too much because I don't want to darken everything out. There has to be some light in there, okay? So it means I'm retaining some of the white of the paper there. So on this one, you know, I'm always kind of preaching, hey, you know, be careful of what you tone in. Don't tone everything out. Retain some light areas so that you have a representation of lighting within a scene. But for me, this one, having those kind of harsh lines there is kind of, it's definitely a challenge. It's like a hurdle that I'm going to have to try to overcome. Okay, now I'm just going with the next value of blue, and I think it's the Broken China. The Mermaid Lagoon looks like a little bit darker, so I'm going with this one next. I probably have a little bit too much ink on here. I probably should have put maybe just a drop of it down. I'm using still the same paper towel that I did with the tumbled glass, the lightest of those Distress Ink values of blue. Okay, just kind of twirling around and being careful to retain that light area, though. Okay. These scenes can come together pretty fast, so that being said, you kind of have to be careful about your coloring rate. Now, I know that for some of you coming from other types of forms of stamping where you're doing kind of outline designs and where you're coloring in within these really defined perimeter, you know, perimeters or whatnot, shapes and whatnot, you know. This might seem a little bit strange, but what you're doing is you're just kind of looking for areas that are lighter on the designs, and then you're making those areas just kind of lighter by not coloring them in, so you're just doing less coloring, okay? And it's always a challenge, I know, but for me, like, the darker areas of the design receive more color when you're coloring them in. Okay, I just put a drop of that on this one. You can see it right there, okay? And I'll add it down here, right around here. Can you see it's really going on, very saturated. So why don't I just use kind of a dry part of the paper towel and see how beautifully that blends in. So these are really great applicators, and it's just, you know, your home household items, right, to do your bidding. See this right here, how I leave that a little bit lighter like that? That's scenic lighting now. So instead of just coloring, you're lighting your scene, your card or whatever, instead of just coloring. And the difference between lighting and coloring is it's just the retention of some areas of light, okay? A little bit of a different mindset, but you get, you know, you get used to it really fast. I've seen it in my classes all the time. The biggest thing is, you know, when people are coloring and they usually start off coloring too much. You know, you have to teach them to kind of utilize the drier portion or the drier version of some of the inks they're using. So I can take it like that and it's very wet, but then I can just switch it around, right? And then I'm kind of spreading around a very dry version of that. So you kind of just go back and forth a little bit until you get the right consistency. Now this is a little bit drier now. You know, just after a couple seconds, it's getting absorbed into the paper towel. And utilizing the drier versions of some of these inks for lighter versions when applied, okay? Now this is brown, blue being applied over brown. So I have this kind of earthy kind of look to this color scheme. I know it doesn't seem like you know, those two would naturally go together, but you know, when you're thinking about more kind of in terms of values more than colors, kind of it's an easy approach. And then when you run through a full kind of spectrum of colors, or values, I should say, values of the relative light and dark of something, everything kind of harmonizes together really well. And some people think I have a really good command of color, but I'm not naturally a colorist. I'm more of a, you know, black and white illustrator. So what I'm dealing with all the time are things like texture and value, and not hue, okay? So it doesn't really come terribly natural to me, but what I do when I'm approaching scenes like this, I mean, naturally I am thinking of color. I'm not color blind or something like that, but kind of my thought process is more geared towards value, thinking light to dark, okay? And that way, I don't know, I keep things really quite simple when it comes to my color usage. You saw me go through a range of blues, just starting from light blues and working into my darker blues, okay? So whatever color scheme I happen to be working with, if it's a sunset, I'm thinking yellow, orange, red. It's kind of light, medium, dark, something like that. If I'm doing a grassy terrain, I'm thinking light greens, medium greens, darker greens, you know. Then there's bright greens, and the distressings have kind of an earthy greens, you know, earthy tones to all their kind of colors. So you can kind of just all mix them together, but you just kind of build them up going from light to dark. I mean, just in general. Okay, so that being said, let's try a little distress walnut stain. You think walnut stain going with blues? Well, you know, not really, because we're not placing these colors right next to each other. We're putting them one over the top of another, okay? So, let's see if it creates some kind of other harmony, right? See where I kind of added in right there? See how different it is right there than over here? So it's not as if we're adding this color in its pure, brown form like that. Okay, it's not brown right next to that. You're putting it over the blue. Dye-based inks are transparent, so colors underneath affect what you see on the surface right here. So it doesn't look like walnut stain. It just looks like some other kind of form of it. Doesn't it look like an interesting, rich tone in there? Is it blue? Is it brown? Is it a little bit of both? But this is where I start kind of bringing kind of a commonality between my stamped imagery, which is brown, and the blue around it, okay? And I can come into my clouds a little bit too. Why not, I left some of those clouds a little bit white, the white of the paper. Now I can kind of come into it a little bit and get kind of maybe a pure version of the walnut right here that I'm using. You can try other colors. The walnut one's a little bit darker though, so, like antique linen. I don't think I'd be able to see this on top of this at all anyway, because it's just so light, so I'm kind of going with one of the darker versions of it. You can mix and match. You can use Memento inks, Stampin' Up, Marvies, whatever. This isn't a color scheme that I use very often, really at all. But since this is kind of a toss-away piece of paper, I just wanted to do something a little bit different. Okay, these were all looking too symmetrical, so I'm kind of toning this one up a little bit so that it's not so as light as this one right here. Okay. All right. Let's try black. Look at this. I'm just using my same applicator still. My finger's not too inky yet. It's usually this offhand that's kind of spinning this around that gets, quite inky. Okay, see that black right there? It's almost like shining shoes or something like that, putting some, tone over the top of something and kind of spreading it around, smoothly. Clouds are starting to kind of merge together a little bit more. I'm not quite as aware of that, those harsh lines, separating lines in between the clouds, that kind of made the piece so awkward. But remember, that was the point of it. I wanted to show someone at a convention what not to do with that cloud. I want everyone to achieve exactly what they're going for with the stamps. If they go home, if they went home and used it, of course. Sometimes people get home from shows and they don't use the stuff, until they go to the next show or something like that. They said, "Hey, I picked those up at the last show, but I never opened them up," or something like that. Or they, I forgot how to do it. That's why I have so many examples up on the YouTube channel and on the website of how to use things. Okay, kind of looking like a real murky but rich surface right here. Okay, I think that color scheme is looking pretty rich right there. Still looking way too symmetrical. I'm going to add some other types of imagery in here still, but let's just keep working with it right now. Kind of changing things around a little bit. The darker you make some areas, it changes the spirit of the piece. I'm going for kind of this strong vignette around the perimeter. And I talked about that in the Techniques ink range video. I love watching transformation. That's why those kind of, kind of makeover episodes of certain TV shows are so popular. It's because you can see something kind of really change in a really short span of time, in the span of like one episode. Someone looks like something and they get their hair done and makeup done and, different outfit or something like that. And they come out looking like a new, completely different person, confident or whatever. But I always like watching kind of the transformation of my scenes kind of taking place before my eyes. It's always a fun thing to watch. And I never know exactly what I'm going to get in terms of all the different combinations of colors that we can use. But all right, that's what we have right here going on right now. Now let's go in and get some of this other type of effect going on. Look at all that. Those are the colors of ink that I used, and look at what we came up with right here. Okay, so that should do it. I think this is going to look really awkward in here because the contrast is just so extreme. But so be it. I want to see what I can come up with in this piece. Like I said, it was a throwaway piece anyway, so I'm feeling particularly adventurous, maybe. And, I don't know. Eager to see what I can come up with. Alright, so I'm going to have, see this cloud right here? I'm going to have some beams of light coming out from there. Okay. This isn't so light, though, so I just, yeah, I don't think it's not the ideal surface. I would leave an area much lighter, but we'll just see how it goes. Okay, I have a cotton ball. And then we have our white pigment ink. I'm going to try to keep the same vanishing point here, okay, as I do these beams in here, okay. All right, let's see if I can. Okay, I don't think I'm going to do these beams too light either, okay. Just because, like I said, the scene itself is not very light to begin with. Okay, let's see. I have to find my vanishing point. Okay, it's going to be right there. By vanishing point, I'm talking about where all of these beams are emanating from, so the top portion of this will always come to that same point. Otherwise, you'll have multiple sources of light, okay? And it'll look really awkward. It's not perfect, but it's close enough there. Okay. And you make these beams different widths too. I think that's better. And also you can kind of make the source of the point of emanation a little bit stronger, so I'm putting more ink up here than down here, okay? As it moves away from that light source, I kind of do less taps. Okay. Just like that. My beams aren't real smooth, but well, like I said, so who cares, I guess I do. But they didn't come out smooth, so I don't care, so it's not as important. See how that works? If it comes out exactly the way you wanted it to be, then you say, yeah, that looks fine. And if it doesn't come out exactly, as you intended, then you say it didn't matter anyway. It's looking pretty interesting. Kind of a, yeah, not really psychedelic, but I don't know. It's looking like some kind of, I don't know, interesting, like animated piece or something. Kind of going for a lighter beam right there. Okay. It's kind of interesting, semi-interesting. You can have it even going up like that. Let's kind of put a beam within a beam here. I don't think I've done this before. But I'll kind of go like this. I'll make it kind of narrow. Beam within that beam. Like it's maybe over the in front of it or something like that. There's another beam in front of it, maybe. You know, kind of talking about three, you know, a little bit more three-dimensional. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, looks pretty good, I guess. See that one right in there, like that. Yeah, it's somewhat interesting, I guess. I don't think I've re-inked this yet, so you can just keep using the same inking. That one I gave a pretty harsh beam, you know, just for the variation. Let's go with one more right here. I'm kind of overlapping another beam here. All right, and now I have some ink on that. Let's kind of diffuse some of this area over here and make it a little bit lighter in here, okay? Kind of this, if this is the source of light here, I want to really kind of add some of that light into that area, especially because, you know, of what we kind of started with. So he's starting off with this kind of these seemingly limitations, you know, based on kind of existing parameters and, in this case, weaknesses. I mean, this was definitely destined for the trash when I do these types of cloud, you know, do's and don'ts demonstrations. See, I didn't have the example of what to do with the cloud, because, you know, I gave that to whoever purchased the cloud at the show, but I had this one of what not to do with it. But I don't know, maybe it ends up being kind of a better scene than you know, the other example of what to do with that. Look at that light coming through there. Isn't that kind of fun? All right, now I have these other clouds back in here. I can diffuse some of those too with the use of this. I'm really using a very dry version of my pigment ink on here at this point in time. Okay. I mean, I gotta get a little bit more once in a while, you know, just to kind of recharge the cotton ball, but just in general. Okay, that looks pretty good, I think. Let's diffuse. Let's really kind of spread that out a little bit. Let's kind of diffuse it. This is what I taught recently on my scenes of going from dark to light. So this one, let's work from light to dark from the interior, okay? And let's try to dissipate this a little bit. Oops, I got a blob right there, so I'll just kind of spread it out. Pigment ink dries really slowly on glossy cardstock. So it really gives us time to kind of manipulate it and move it around a little bit. Okay, look at that. It's like a nice kind of glow, isn't it? Oops. Alright, now what I was thinking about this is really trying to maximize some of the effects in it, so I've added a little bit of water to my bleed-proof white here. I guess I didn't get enough splatter painting when I was in kindergarten because I sure enjoyed doing it. I'm doing it a lot on my scenes lately. I just love the texture it can give. Okay, let's see what we can do here. I think I kind of concentrated it a little bit more right in that spot right there. So what we have right here. So does that look like it's kind of emanating from there a little bit? A little bit. I don't know. It would have been better if I can kind of splatter it more directionally. Maybe if I tilted this and I splattered from like at an angle, you know, down like that, that would have been good. But anyways, not too bad like this. Okay, so let's go back to this black ink, okay? Let's see. Sometimes on these beams, I like to kind of mellow out the ends of them out here by the perimeters. So I'll go back in with a little bit of black and go back into my perimeters or at the end of the beams, and I'll just kind of tone the beams on a little bit like this, okay? It kind of gives the beams a little bit of a tint. See, I don't know if you can tell, but see, it just kind of darkens them at the end a little bit. I mean, you didn't have to do it to all of them, but oh, it just, I don't know, it adds a little bit more of a kind of that vignette back into it. I can still see them, but they seem a little bit more translucent this way, you know, like see-through, which I really like. Okay. I was thinking about this deer right here. Nice strong silhouette. That was my kind of one of my concepts when I was taking a look at these clouds and thinking about this light streaming down. Let's use a Versafine black. It'll give me a really strong dark black impression. And it really does need something strong and dark against that otherwise very dark background too, right? Okay, see that? Wow. God, that is really dramatic. If you come across some scenes or stuff, you know, your mistaked pieces, don't toss them out, send them to me. That's the one thing that I can't do. I'm not going to just take a bunch of papers and just, you know, do something haphazard and say, okay, I'm going to throw that away. No, let's fix it, you know, or something like that. It's kind of not in the spirit of this, but I don't know. I would love to take a crack at your pieces that are seemingly kind of destined for the circular file, as it's been called. I think there's always something that you can kind of do to scenes, and maybe make an even stronger piece than, you know, what was originally intended. Maybe. Like, I would never do this composition, you know. It just wouldn't come to me to do this one. But having to work around this kind of existing set of parameters, I don't know. It forces you to kind of work outside of your own box, even though I don't like to really think that I'm kind of in a box, you know, stamping-wise. I probably am, because I do come up with some, you know, some different things, having to work around other types of, you know, kind of compositional challenges, I would say. All right, those were the leaves. I always like my leaves stamp. Okay. Let's get some grasses here. This is what I was looking for right here. Don't lose that stuff for your tack and peel. All right. That really looks very, very dimensional. Now, see, I wouldn't do like walnut over all, you know, like all of these blues like that either. I just wanted to kind of branch out a little bit with this piece. This piece, I mean, it's not, I don't know, it didn't take very long at all. And there's a lot of techniques that I've worked into it. Okay, some foreground reeds, like we're kind of standing in the grasses looking at this magnificent creature. I don't know, I like that cloud up there. I thought it would be too much, but you know, like when I kind of blended it out a little bit with that pigment ink, you know, right in there. I mean, that cloud right there, it looked like that one before, right? But look at that. So much fun. A lot of dimension and depth right there. And I don't know, maybe a new color scheme to to put into the files for me to use again in the future. This is one of those color schemes, though. I don't know, maybe I can replicate it or whatnot, but sometimes you get these kind of, color schemes that you've come up with, and you want to do them again. It's really hard to duplicate, maybe because this one was kind of based around those, I don't know, like I said, those challenges in there. So I just felt like just kind of fooling around and playing around with some things. And then someone else asked me about distressings, and I thought, yeah, let's use some of those. I haven't been using those as much lately, so I do love my my re-inkers of them, though. And you saw it, the first color, I used quite a bit of it, but with those other colors, it was like a drop of it, just on a paper towel, and one paper towel took care of that entire background. It wasn't even one paper towel, it's like one piece of one. It's like a quarter, maybe, quarter sheet or something like that. So sometimes the best applicators are found, can be found, or certainly an adequate, applicator can be found right in your own cupboard or something like that. So anyways, hope you enjoyed it. I'm taking a look and seeing if I want any more, but I think it makes a complete statement there just as is. I don't think any kind of white gel pen or anything like that. I think just keeping it kind of flat like that and letting that random kind of spray patterning of the bleed-proof white is sufficient, and maybe the best for this particular composition in terms of the detailing. So, alright, fun stuff. Thanks again for watching. If you like this video, hope you like, share, and subscribe. And what is that thing? I think if you hit this bell icon or something like that on YouTube, it'll notify you whenever I post a new video.